Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I am showing you a very exciting new supporter card coming out in the upcoming Fairy Rise expansion. It's Mina, and quite obviously, it's really good for fairy Pokemon. But what else would you expect from a card which is coming in Fairy Rise? Now, this has been revealed and translated by the lovely David Hochmann, Mr. RappelmannTCG himself. Do make sure you are checking limitlesstcg.com/translations, the best Pokemon TCG archive of translations on the interweb. And actually, as far as I'm aware, the only one, although obviously then go watch all my videos for the analysis. And Mina's a character that was in Pokemon Sun and Moon and got ignored for quite a while. A character for whom we didn't think a card was on the cards. Well, that has all changed, and it's a good one. Search your deck for a fairy energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. So it has to be a fairy energy, but it can be attached to any of your Pokemon. Usual ruling reminder here that although something like a rainbow energy can count as a fairy energy, that is only when it's attached. So this has got to be a basic fairy energy. And although it can be only a fairy energy, it can be attached to any Pokemon you like. This is energy acceleration in the form of a supporter. This is really quite nice. This is what Masked Royal could have been if it wasn't rubbish. Masked Royal allows you to attach an extra energy from your hand, but only to a grass, water, or fire Pokemon, only to a stage 2, and you've got to have the energy in your hand to begin with. Way too awkward. This attaches from your deck, so you don't have to have the energy, and it attaches to any Pokemon whatsoever. Although generally it'll be a Pokemon that wants to use either Fairy or colourless energy. Fairy Pokemon are getting a boost. We knew they would. Dragon Pokemon got a huge boost in Dragon Storm, what is coming out here as Dragon Majesty. But this is a kind of supporter card where how often have we wanted this in the past? Now, we don't have Versus Seeker, which is very sad, although if you go into Expanded, you obviously will have. But we still have Tapu Lele, and Tapu Lele can still be used to search out any supporter whenever you like, which means you can grab a Mina whenever you want and get that extra energy attachment, and it makes Pokemon much better. So let's look at a Gardevoir in Fairy Rise. We looked at this the other day, I'll pop a link in the description, and it's got a really nice attack that does 160 damage if you played a supporter this turn. And then of course you add a choice band and you're getting a one-hit KO on stuff like Buzzwole. Although if you don't, 160 is still enough to get pretty much any non-GX, think something like Solgaleo Prism Star, so that's pretty gosh darn sweet. The problem is that unlike Gallade that could use it for just a double colourless energy, this used a fairy and the double colourless energy. That's a little bit of a pain. So what we have instead here is you attach a double colourless, you play a Mina, and then you're going in one turn with the added bonus, of course, that playing a Mina to get the energy on there means that you must have played a supporter for the turn, because you played the Mina, and then you can just be sitting there doing 160. It turns it from an, we've got to attach 2 energy, to a, yay, going in one turn. And sure, you can use Gardevoir GX here, but that means you've got to have Gardevoir GX out and regular Gardevoir, and that's a little bit of a pain. When I talked about the Gardevoir from Fairy Rise, I said that in some matchups you don't want Gardevoir on the bench because it gives up 2 prizes and a Guzma can come and KO it, and that's a little bit of a pain. Well, here, you don't need to have a Gardevoir on the bench because you can use this and you're rolling. Now, obviously it is your supporter for the turn, so it's not always the most convenient. It means you can't use this and something like a Guzma, for instance. It also means you're going to need some kind of consistency crutch, quite possibly, that isn't this. But you can use something like Oranguru. Annoyingly, Octillery is rotating, which sucks because that generally would have been your chosen one. But we're getting a new Zeb Striker, which allows you to discard your hand and draw 4 cards. So, given that we've got other options for drawing cards, it doesn't matter if we're using a supporter like this that doesn't draw cards, just so long as we've got something like a Zeb Striker on the bench. And essentially what this does is it takes cards that would otherwise not be viable and makes them viable. Gardevoir from Fairy Rise was viable with the GX, but this is more viable with Mina. Similarly, Gardevoir GX doesn't need Mina. Gardevoir can attach 2 energy because of the Secret Spring ability. But how about using Mina to then attach 3 energy in one turn? Imagine being able to attach a double colourless as your energy for the turn, then an energy with Secret Spring, then an energy with Mina, then a Choice Band. That's 150 damage if there's no energy on the defending Pokemon, 180 if there's one, and so on and so forth. Even cards like Gardevoir, where you might look at it and go, I don't know, can take advantage of this quite nicely. And there's nothing to stop you playing one copy of this, and then playing something like a Palpad to use it over and over again. Or maybe even the Delcatty, which came out in Celestial Storm, or is coming out in Celestial Storm. When you evolve it up, you get to put 2 supporter cards from your discard pile into your hand. It takes up bench space, it's probably not going to see a huge amount of play, but it remains an option. And if we look at something like Sylveon GX, this completely rewrites how we play Sylveon GX. Because Sylveon GX, everyone's expecting, look, you attach 1 energy for a magical ribbon, and then next turn you can attach a double colourless and use Fairy Wind or maybe even Plea GX. But we know that all you can do for now is Magical Ribbon, so we can play the game assuming you can't attack, or at least can't do any damage. But now with Mina around, anyone who comes up against a Sylveon has got to be sitting there thinking, oh, hang on a second, because they could always just attach an energy and a double colourless, and then they're off and rolling. Especially if you use Magical Ribbon in the early game, your opponent doesn't know if you've got a Mina stashed in your hand or not, because with N rotating, it's only really going to be Judge that can disrupt hands, and I do not expect that to see anywhere near as much play. So you can be using Magical Ribbon in the early game, and then your opponent's pretty much got to assume that you can be getting Sylveon down with a double colourless and a fairy at a moment's notice. I mean, take something like a Alolan Ninetales GX. We looked at this the other day. The GX attack instantly KOs an Ultra Beast, as long as it's in the active. But then again, you look at it and you go, well, it's 2 energy, so we're gonna be able to see this coming. Unless they've got a Gardevoir on the field, but then we'll know they've got a Gardevoir on the field. But now with Mina, you can just go, evolve up into a Alolan Ninetales, or you could even do it before the evolve, to be perfectly honest. And then Mina, attach an energy, and you're off and rolling. This changes the game when we look at fairy Pokemon. Because all of a sudden, when you're playing fairy Pokemon, you've got options opened up to you that you didn't have before. And when you're playing against fairy Pokemon, all of your calculations get thrown into whack. You've now got to calculate Gardevoir, bearing in mind they can get an extra energy. You've now got to look at Alolan Ninetales or Mimikyu GX that we looked at the other day. I'll pop links to these in the description. Or the Gardevoir from Fairy Rise and go, these could get going in a single turn. We can make this work, and that's the problem. Or the advantage, depending on whether you're playing against or with fairy Pokemon. I mean, even something like a Tapu Lele here. Magical Swap is awesome, because it just lets you move damage counters around your opponent's side of the field. But again, unless you've actually got a Gardevoir GX on the field, you can't get it going in one turn. Well, now you can. But it also opens up weird plays. So you could, for instance, be playing an Alolan Ninetales deck, but focusing on the water Alolan Ninetales. And then, at the drop of a hat, what you actually end up doing is evolving into your 1 fairy Alolan Ninetales, dropping your 1 copy of Mina, and bearing in mind when you're using Tapu Lele, it's not that difficult to find your 1 copy of it, searching your deck for the 1 fairy energy that you actually play, and then getting a 1-hit KO on an Ultra Beast. It's weird the kind of things you can do with this. It changes the maths. It makes Pokemon viable that weren't viable. It makes okay Pokemon good. And it potentially opens up some crazy, weird, unpredictable plays. And that makes me, on a personal level, absolutely delighted. I cannot sit here and say it's definitely going to see play in a lot of decks. But for as long as we've got Tapu Lele and these things are easy to search out, you should be playing this in any fairy deck. It's exciting that fairy decks are getting better in this way, but honestly, the more exciting thing for me is thinking of all the dumb things we can do with this card, playing 1 or 2 fairy energy and 1 fairy Pokemon and dropping them as a complete surprise. The other thing is, now, anytime we talk about any fairy Pokemon for the next couple of years until this rotates, we're going to have to sit there thinking, hey, how could Mina be used with this? I'm giving this 5 Wassies because it's supporter-based energy acceleration, and it's just over the top good. And it should see play in a lot of different decks, which is my definition of a 5 Wassie card. One of my definitions. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to hear from you lovely people. So, let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but remember the rule. Be nice. Tell me which fairy Pokemon you want to use this with. And of course, make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.